Hello everyone. I thought today we'd take a look at the Abelo 12 frame polystyrene hive. So here it is, the Abelo 12 frame poly hive. I just want to say at the outset that I'm not being paid by Abelo to make this video or anything of that nature. I purchased this hive obviously using my own money, but there are lots of positives and I very much like this hive, so I just felt it might be informative to do a video on it. And if you're considering poly hives, it might just help you make up your mind, make your decision on what poly hive you should look at. I have a number of these in operation at the moment. Well, I have 10 in operation. I plan on getting at least another 10 in operation this year. So you know, I really like them. Now obviously I've only been using them the last 2 years, so just in terms of the lifespan, I don't know. Abelo obviously claims, and they're made by Lyson, but Abelo claims that, you know, they'll last for 10 years or in excess of 10 years. So obviously I haven't tested that particular aspect, but I see no reason to disbelieve them on that. You know, there's plenty of built-in sturdiness in them. We'll talk about it as we go through the video, but they're a good sturdy hive, and so you know, if I can get 10 years out of them, I think it's a worthwhile investment in my hives. Bees do great in them. And yeah, so this is the 12 frame version. It's you know, it's a larger capacity in terms of the number of frames than the majority of other poly hives that I'm aware of on the market. So that in itself is the first checkpoint positive that I have in relation to these particular hives. But anyway, without further ado, let's take a look inside. Go down through each component of the hive. I've said this before, this is probably, in my opinion anyway, one of the best poly hives on the market currently. It's made by Lyson for Abelo in the UK, and it is, as I've said, a 12 frame version. Lyson and Abelo make several other national hives variants, but this is a 12 frame version, and again, there's in my view, it is the best that's on the market, and that's because there are many, I suppose, changes to this one over previous iterations. And I'm calling them previous iterations. They're still being manufactured by Lyson, but this is, I suppose, the pinnacle. So you'll see, or you'll notice that the hive is it's flush sides, but it's also interlocking. Now there are other polyhive manufacturers that do something similar. They have a rebate in for the boxes to interlock, but none of them are, I suppose, at the same level as, in my opinion, again, as what Abelo have done here, and Lyson. So first off, we have the lid. It's a good heavy lid, and you'll see there's vent holes here. Now the vent holes can be plugged, and I'll just show you. We have these plugs here, so you can plug them with a ventilation plug or a solid plug. Now my usual configuration is to do a solid plug on one side of the lid and on the other side then do the ventilation plugs, so they sit right in flush. Okay. Again, as I've said, the hive is flush down the sides. Now this, for me, is beneficial because you can get hives in close together. It'd be similar to, I suppose, the migration lids used in American hives, Langstroth hives. You know, that whole objective of those migration lids is that you can put hives on a pallet close together for transportation. So again, this is similar, and I have a project in line, hopefully this year, and with these, and I have these specific hives in mind for that project. But I already have 10 of them in use out in my apiaries at the moment. I'm getting a few more. That's the plan, and yeah, I really like them. But anyway, let's move on. So you can see here there's a groove for a strap to sit in, and the edges are reinforced for the strap to tighten down on the strap. Really handy, because obviously if you're tightening up strap and polystyrene, you have the potential to dent it or even crack it, so that just helps with preventing that. It is essential, obviously, with a polyhive, even more so than wooden hives, to strap down the roof or put a weight on it. I prefer to strap them down just because the actual look, they do take it, and but I'm sure over long term the effect of a block or something sitting on top of a poly roof is possibly going to shorten its life. So below the roof then we have, you'll see the roof, it's a deep enough roof. Yeah, and you will get a feeder under that roof. Abelo have a feeder that fits in, and you see in this space here on the crown board, you can buy a feeder that fits that. I think it takes 2 litres of syrup. I don't have it, but it doesn't come as part of the kit. And actually, just to tell you, the hive comes with, this is the unpainted version. It comes with a brood chamber and 2 supers, crown board and roof, and the floor, obviously. Again, most poly hive manufacturers that I'm aware of don't actually produce a poly crown board. It's usually a flimsy perspex screen. So here with Abelo you get a good heavy duty crown board. Now Lyson have always done that, I think, with their hives, with the poly crown boards, but you know, it adds that extra layer of insulation for the bees. Bees do really well in these hives, I'm going to say, but I mean, I've heard that in relation to a lot of the Lyson hives, the variations out there, but they love these 12 frame ones, in my experience anyway, as well. I prefer to get the unpainted ones just before we move on, because you know, it allows me to paint them whatever colours I want. There are I think it's 3 colours available in the 12 frame range, pre-painted ones. You see here, and actually on the crown board I meant to point that out, you have your rebate or your recess, and it's good moulded heavy duty plastic along the edges. You don't have the moulded plastic on the roof, but that's because the roof obviously it's going to be sitting down on the crown board. The bees aren't going to propolise it down, but wherever the bees actually may or have the potential to propolise down parts of the hive, it's reinforced with this plastic. Also, for using a hive tool to prise it, you'll see here there's a gap in the corners to allow you to get, if I can just get that there, to get your hive tool in to prise it up. And this is it's a minor little detail, but at the same time, that's what puts it ahead of the rest. Again, in my opinion, because most other poly hives, I'm not aware, they certainly don't even have this reinforced plastic, but just even the thought of being able to slot a hive tool in and prise it up, it makes life easier. Even on my wooden hives, where I do be digging in the corners, this corner gets worn from trying to prise up, and if you've got a box that's well propolized down and it's kind of cold outside and it makes that propolis weld fairly hard, even on a wooden hive it damages it. So that's it's a neat little design. I lost some footage and audio at this point, but I was just saying that this is a top bee space hive. Now for me, that's not an issue. I run all my national hives, wooden boxes and poly boxes, as top bee space. That's just the way I prefer to run my hives. So for me, a top bee space poly hive isn't an issue. It also doesn't make an issue then if I want to interchange between wood and the poly boxes. Because obviously you only get 2 supers with this kit. I'm not going to buy additional poly supers just for the sake of having all poly supers. It's just a simple matter of popping a box up on top. I'll actually I'll see if I can get a wooden box here just to put on, just to show you how it fits. Okay, so here you can see a wooden box, a well-worn wooden box that I have just sat on top of the super there, and you'll see that it actually sits on the sort of raised section. Okay, so it's this section here, we'll say here, is the exact footprint of the wooden boxes, national wooden boxes. So obviously a national wooden box takes 11 frames. This is a 12 frame version, so you get one extra frame in. That in itself is just it's a boon, just in terms of managing your colonies. National frames, as we all know, are relatively small, and so having that extra frame just gives you extra time, I suppose, when it comes to then doing swarm management and so on. Allows the queen just to develop that bit more in the colony before there's any thoughts of swarming. But also, it does mean that you're not necessarily having to work brood and a half or double deeps. I tend not to work double deeps unless I'm doing a demo split. I might talk about that during the summer. I just find that extra frame kind of gives me enough room, because I like to split my colonies obviously hard during the summer, even production colonies. So having that extra frame again just allows me to do that, but yet still leave a strong colony behind. Here you can see it has 12 frames in place. Now, frames do fit in nice and snug, so there's no need for a dummy board. That's the one thing that irritates me, I suppose, in a sense, about wooden national boxes. It's not quite you still have to use a dummy board in a national wooden box, and I suppose a dummy frame, what is really the point of it? I don't see it. So I actually tend not to use them myself. I try to space the frames out, but there's always issues with that. So this is a true 12 frame hive. It's not a case of 11.5 or whatever, or you having to fill the space with a dummy board anyway. So it's you get your full 12 frames in there. Now there's one, I suppose we might say, design issue that I think exists in this hive, and it's just personal to me, maybe, perhaps, but I suppose when you do have that little bit of playroom there, okay, and that's not an issue, obviously. That's to allow you to lift your frames in and out, but I do find that when I come to open a hive for inspection, I want to take out, say, the first frame, and it has been my practice, obviously, with wooden hives, to just get in here. I tend not to use the lugs to lever on, so I lever from here, especially with the first frame, and that obviously isn't reinforced here. You can see there's no reinforced plastic there. So I do think if Lyson and Abelo were thinking of making any alterations to this hive, I think it would be beneficial to even just have a sort of a reinforced plate somewhere around here, that you could lever your hive tool off without digging into the polystyrene there. Now, you're not going to dig in too much, I suppose, because your hive tool is going to hit off this reinforced piece here, but you still, nonetheless, you're going to dig out a corner there. And I think once you start digging into it, the bees will begin chewing it, and that's the only little niggle I would say I have with these hives. But I mean, apart from that, I absolutely love them. I think they're great. Yeah, so another thing, and I meant to say it earlier when the boxes were stacked, is that there are these holes, for simple word to use, located on one side of each box. You'll see them here on the supers, and I have plugs on them here. The hives come with these plugs, so you get the ventilation plugs and you get these solid plugs. But it allows you, if you want, to use these spaces as upper entrances if you want. Now, Abelo or Lyson sell separately little, I suppose, lighting boards that you can slot in there to give an entrance for lighting. It just allows you to consider different manipulations for the hives if you want, if you're going to put in a snail growth board or something of that nature. I don't particularly use them myself. I just fit the solid plug in. Bees tend to propolize that up, so removing it from the outside actually it becomes impossible once it's propolized. So you kind of have to get into the hive and push them out from the outside or from the inside if you want to do that. But again, I mean, it's not a feature that I'm using, so I can't really comment, to be honest. Well, just to take off the brood chamber now, and I'll look at the floor. So the floor, see, a common complaint I hear with poly hives, and I have had this experience myself with some other brands of poly hives, is that the bees are inclined to build comb down to the floor, build wild comb from the bottom of the frames. Sometimes they'll build it crossways or at right angles to the actual base of the frame. This can obviously, they're joining up 2 or 3 frames together, which leaves it then very difficult to take out the frames when you're doing your inspections. But also they can drop comb down from the frame right down to the floor and actually weld it to the floor, and then you have the issue that when you come to lift up your frame, you find your frame is stuck down. You're there trying to prise it up, and the bees are getting angry, or a lot of the times it tends to be drone brood, I find, but it gets messy, and there's the potential there for crushing bees and potentially killing your queen as well in the process of trying to take out the frame. But with this one here, you can see that the floor is actually sloped, and I find that this seems to have resolved that issue. I don't have bees building comb down to the floor, especially if you do it the orientation in the warm way. Now, ordinarily my I suppose way of keeping especially wooden boxes is actually to orient the box in the cold way. That's, I suppose, frames running. I'll show you for some people that might not know, but that is actually the way I prefer to run. You have your entrance there in the front, and you have your frames, so they run front to back there. But if you run the frames parallel, we'll say, to the entrance, I suppose. This is the warm way, as it's commonly known. I find that the bees don't build wild comb down for sure. A little bit of wild comb might get built if it's kept in the cold way. But I'm not sure if that's the reason why that is there. Abelo's website doesn't really have any information on it as to why that's there. I mean, another potential reason is for runoff, but I don't really see that as being an issue, given that it's a screened floor. But I mean, I'm just assuming that that's what it's there for. The floor again is reinforced here along the edges, and again, you could sit a wooden box on this, no problem. Obviously the footprint of the wooden box would be along this edge here, so you'd have this lip standing out, but that wouldn't really be an issue to use a wooden box directly on this floor if that's what you were minded to do. It is a good dense floor, but obviously it's a screened bottom board as well, so I mean, poly, it's probably not necessary to have the floor poly. It's not going to offer any additional insulation as such when this area here is screened. But just design, I like this floor. I like it over, say, the previous iterations of the Lyson and Abelo national hives. I think the entrance lighting board is neatly done in comparison to the other versions. I know some people don't like it at all and tend to cut it off just to keep the whole hive flush, but I quite like it, so I mean, there it remains. Underneath the floor, you can see it has good solid legs on it, I'm going to call them, and it just prevents the poly from getting damaged. Now you can see here as well, we have, which in comparison to other poly hives on the market, this is fantastic. A good solid tray underneath, and it's a deep tray as well, so it really collects the material. The only maybe minor disadvantage I have noticed with that is because it collects the wax obviously down here, and it's a good deep tray of it. Wax moth does tend to be present, and I'm not sure if it's, I haven't noticed as such yet whether it gives an infestation in the hive, but it does allow wax moth to collect in the tray, alright. Just in terms of the tray, I don't treat my colonies for varroa. When I say I don't treat them, I don't treat them with chemical treatments. So for me, the tray essentially remains in place. I do monitor my mites on that tray. So just because I don't treat doesn't mean I don't monitor my mites. because obviously if I see colonies with very high mite loads from a natural drop, then I can carry out certain manipulations to try and reduce the number of mites. But again, so I'm not using treatments. But but it's great to see a solid tray in the bottom, and that's what again puts this hive, I think, above the rest that are on the market. The hive, in comparison to other models that are out there, probably is, it is a bit more expensive, but you can see the value in it in that extra expense, because you're getting a good heavy duty polystyrene hive in comparison to some other brands. It's good dense foam or polystyrene, and it's good, it's thick heavy stuff. You can't, there's no chance of you dinging it there when you're pressing it. Obviously, it is poly, and so if you hit it off something, yes, of course it's going to dent and it's going to mark, but so does wood if you hit it hard enough. So these are supposed to last at least 10 years. So if I'm getting 10 years out of these hives, I'm quite happy with that. I'm moving more towards poly hives in I've decided this over the last year or two, simply because my wooden boxes are not holding up. There's the weather here in Ireland has just been increasingly getting wetter and wetter and wetter, and not only in the winter months but in the summer months as well. So I've just noticed that my wooden boxes are becoming waterlogged and then rotting out within a very short space of time, especially my pine boxes. I treat them, but that doesn't seem to have much of an effect. So I decided to test out. I tested out these poly boxes over the last 2 years, and I'm very happy with the Abelo ones. I've also purchased a number of Paradise Honey ones. We might talk about them another day, but I think it's unfortunately, in a sense, it's kind of the way forward, really. But because designs in these boxes like this rebit here, and in fact this little step up seems to prevent moisture ingress into the hive. I don't have significant issues anyway, we'll say, with moisture ingress. There's a little bit of water creep maybe up. You'll find it along here, but it's very rare that you'll actually see it inside the hive. On these particular boxes, I'm going to say that because I have poly nukes from another manufacturer letting water in. I mean, no matter what, even with the perspex screen on top, I still find that the lugs in particular get waterlogged and they rot out over the course of one winter. And the bees obviously themselves are suffering as a result because there's dampness in the hive. Like significant levels of dampness, and you can see where it's actually creeping in on those boxes, because you'll have mold on this lip, and the lip here that's here is actually made of poly on this particular brand I'm talking about, and so it seems to allow the water to creep up, whereas here on these Abelo hives you don't seem to have that issue. Yeah, so that's the Abelo hive. Look, you can just see, just to show you underneath as well on the super again, there's that moulded plastic, so it's good and solid. You can see how thick the walls are as well. Now I know obviously some of that thickness is taken away then for your handholds, but again, similarly, they're good, decent, sturdy handholds. There's no movement in that poly when you're lifting boxes, especially when they're full of honey. Like, you want a good solid piece of kit, and these definitely hit the mark. So yeah, that's the Abelo poly hive. I hope I've done it some justice. I do really like them. You're going to see more of them over the course of the summer if I take more videos. out in the apiaries, so you'll see them in use. Just have this unpainted one here. It's due to get a lick of paint to have it ready to go for the summer season, and also I hope to get more in the next few days arriving. So thanks for watching, and like and subscribe, and leave in the comments if you want anything covered in particular. Just leave a note in the comments and I'll try and get back, or if you want something answered, just put a question in the comments and I'll try and answer it. Okay, thank you, thanks for watching, bye.